This is crazy. This is ridiculous, and we need to dive into it. Bradley Beal, yes, had a disappointing season as a third option for the Phoenix Suns team, but in no right is he this low on a third option list. So we're gonna be diving in, looking at a article that is stating that Bradley Beal is ranked this low. No way. We're gonna break this down, how he's going to prove everybody wrong, even for the people that don't necessarily believe all the way in Bradley Beal, that he is better than some of these names that are ahead of him. All of that and more on this episode of Suns Digest. I'm Bruce Velez. You guys have been absolutely fantastic, showing your love and support for CJ and I over on the channel, and we really do appreciate it. Media Day is getting closer and closer starting next week. We'll have all the news breaking for you guys leading up to that. So if you want to make sure you stay up to date on everything, hit the like button to stay in the Suns algorithm. But without further ado, let's dive to the video at hand. Make sure to grab a snack. And this is way too much hate. As someone who did not like the Bradley Beal trade initially, this is just way too much discourse on Bradley Beal, and we need to break it down. Now, as you all know, when Bradley Beal was traded for the Phoenix Suns, it was a uproar. Trading for a third $50 million contract. How are you going to construct a team? How are you going to build it when the problem arose last off season? The Suns tried their best to utilize Booker as a playmaker, as a point guard, but it didn't work out as the Suns were eliminated in the first round, with an abundance of other issues being added on top of it. Now, the Suns kind of ripped that band aid off, gone after some point guards, addressed that elephant in the room, bringing in Monte Morris, bringing in Tyus Jones, moving Booker and Beal back to those scores that they truly can be, and ultimately hoping Bradley Beal can unlock himself as being a better third scorer. So we're going to look at an article which states that Bradley Beal is not as good as I think, and we're going to be discussing why he should be ahead of some of these guys on the list. So let's look at this article, courtesy of Kevin Hicks on Sports Illustrated of the Phoenix Suns. Analysts still doubting Suns guard Bradley Beal, as the Phoenix Sun star doesn't have many fans these days. Now, and it may be because of his contract, it may be because of his injury history, it may be because of his production. It could be a combination of all of those. Bradley Beal hasn't had the biggest backers and believers, and that is facts. So we're going to be looking at this article where Ben Rohrback of Yahoo Sports did just that. Rohrback is currently doing a 5-part series where he looks at the top 5 options on each team and ranking them 1 through 30 instead of looking at them from comparative positions, which is something that I think is very cool. We're looking at the number 1 option on the team. Kevin Durant came in his number as the 10th best number 1 option in the league, and Devin Booker was ranked as the second best number 2 option. Now that could be argued, that could be displayed, and that could be put for a whole nother video. But both of those players kind of coming in at those positions does seem pretty fair, kind of seem relative of where they should belong in a full NBA space. But when looking at Bradley Beal, he did not fall into those top tier numbers, and that is just ridiculous. So when looking at tier 3 players and what they bring, this is what Ben Rohrback had to display for that for you guys. This is his definition of a third number 3. So what is a number 3? He's still a star, at least on a good team, but he is sacrificing some faction of his game for the greater good of that team. He usually leans into his greater skill set, whether that is a flame throwing threes or defending like crazy. Ideally, it is both. And if you ask more from your third star, he answers the call. There's a balance to downsizing your role and remaining as efficient as ever, and it is the third star responsibility to strike it. Think of Kevin Love on the 2016 Cavaliers. He arrived from a lottery team in Minnesota, where he was the number 1, in an entirely different place that an entirely different player at that. Doing most of his damage inside of an 8-foot, but transitioning to a 3-and-D weapon, being behind LeBron James and Kyrie Irving, the greatest teams in NBA history featured Hall of Fame talents who might have even more productive on lesser posters. You know them well, Robert Parrish, James Worthy, Dennis Rodman, etc. They managed to understand their position in the pecking order and find their way to thrive in it. And I think even more to kind of back that up and look at a more familiar and reasonable standpoint looking at last season is looking at that Boston Celtics team with Kristaps Porzingis, Derek White, and Drew Holiday, all realistically sacrificing their roles of being top 2 or top 3 players on opposing teams and coming together as one to win a championship. It is something that we have seen and something that I think definitely values a third star. Now, for the Phoenix Suns, that may be a little bit difficult because their third star in Bradley Beal definitely shares a lot of qualities that their other 2 stars in Kevin Durant and Devin Booker share. Obviously, being flamethrowers from the offensive side and being traditionally known as offensive players. When you have 3 of your best players that all similarly play the same role, it's a little difficult for some of them to, sacrifice themselves in that role and help out in other areas when they're not expertises in that areas. And that's more of a building of the roster on the Suns front office standpoint, which is another different story. But ultimately, with Bradley Beal coming in, having to be that third star, he should be able to make some of these adjustments. And when we look at his stats from last season, we can see that Bradley Beal averaged 18 points, 4.5 rebounds, 5 assists on 51% shooting from the field and 43% shooting from three. Now, at 31 years old and making around $50 million, this is not what is needed. He needs to have a bigger production value. And I do think with Devin Booker not having to play those point guard roles, Bradley Beal not having to play those point guard role as much, it is going to allow these guys to be scorers, playing off the wing, being able to be more prioritized as catch and shoot like a stretch abilities, and I think that's going to help out the Suns in the long run, specifically this season. But let's look at some of those guys that Ben Rohrback put ahead of Bradley Beal. Now, we just saw Bradley Beal's stats. You don't have everyone's stats to come by here, but you guys just saw Bradley Beal's stats. Like I said, 18, 4, 5, shooting 51% from the field, 43% from three. Could have done better stats, could have looked better. But we're going into the anticipations for this season. I think Bradley Beal is going to be a better player than this. I think he's going to average 21 points. I think he's going to average 21 points. I think he's going to average 53% shooting from the field, and I think he'll get back up to that 45% on that three-point shooting, if not to a 46 or 47%, which is something that I would really, really like to see out of Bradley Beal. Let's dive in. Let's look at some of these players that he compared, because that's what you guys came here for. The rankings that came in ahead of Beal. At number 9, we have Draymond Green, and at number 10, we have Miles Turner. Number 11, we got Chris Middleton. At number 12, we got DeJounte Murray. And number 13, we got Fred VanVleet. So these 5 are the 5 ahead of Bradley Beal. And I got a lot to say about these. Draymond Green, yes, he is a third option on this Warriors team, but is he bringing more than what Bradley Beal is? Yeah, he's helping out in all those areas that Steph and Clay, I guess, don't really presume. But now with Clay gone, who's your second option? Is it Brandon Podziemski, Jonathan Kuminga? Are we still viewing Draymond as a third option? Are we viewing him as a second option? Big question mark. Miles Turner, I can say basically the same thing. Now, Turner last season was definitely a big, impactful piece on the defensive side of the floor for Indiana, as they weren't not known not to be one of the best defensive teams. But honestly, I think a guy in Bennedict Mathurin has that chance to become that third star this season and showcase that for the Pacers this year. And even though he might be competing alongside Miles Turner for that role, Miles Turner being that third star, I don't think necessarily is highlighted as much as Bradley Beal being that third star for this team. I think when you hear the Phoenix Suns, yeah, you think of Tyus Jones, but he's on a lower tier than some of these guys. Bennedict Mathurin and Miles Turner, with Bennedict Mathurin's rise and expectations that he's supposed to have this season, he could be on the same level as Miles Turner. So is he solidified third option? I don't necessarily know. Keep looking down this list. Talk about some other guys that we want to break down here as well. Let's talk about Chris Middleton, DeJounte Murray, and Fred VanVleet. Now, DeJounte Murray, I think, is better than Bradley Beal at this point. He still is younger. He still has that way to grow, way to be that playmaker, way to be that facilitator. But Chris Middleton and Fred VanVleet, I think, are some big question marks as well. Chris Middleton, I think, could be arguably said viewed as equal as Bradley Beal, in my opinion, as contributing for a third star. Chris Middleton, let's not forget, has had an abundance of injuries. Let's not forget last season also could not play in back-to-backs, making $40 million a year for a Milwaukee Bucks team that is still pushing for a championship. And that is something that you do not want to have. The Boston Celtics have a player that can't play in back-to-backs, and that's Al Horford, but he makes $12 million. And he's coming off the bench already for this team. Chris Middleton is your third best player, and he has to rest on back-to-backs. He's making $40 million. I don't necessarily know if he's way better than Bradley Beal. I think he is on average or on pace as Bradley Beal. DeJounte, I could easily see being ahead of him. And then Fred VanVleet, another player. Yes, he went to the Rockets. Yes, he's their third star now, but Jalen Green going to be getting better. Cam Whitmore going to be getting better. Alperen Sengun getting better. Jabari Smith getting better. I don't know how long Fred VanVleet's going to be the third option for this team. And this season, he might be the third option, yeah, but I don't know. I think Bradley Beal is way better than Fred VanVleet. I think he's a better scorer, better playmaker, and would be a more impactful player for the Rockets than Fred VanVleet if you insert him. DeJounte Murray, I don't think so, but Chris Middleton, I think he would help out the Milwaukee Bucks in all their scoring and what they need. That's one of their big lacks was scoring, and then he'd be able to help add at that position. Ultimately, I just think it's a little ridiculous. When you look at players that are below Bradley Beal, Kobe White, Jalen Johnson. Now, those players, I think, could also be kind of talked about as well because Kobe White, I don't know if he's the third option. Again, Zach LaVine, Nikola Vucevic might have bigger names, bigger name value, but Kobe White is that number one option going into this team this season, I believe. Kobe White is your face, not face of the franchise, but the future that you were building upon. Your six man, your most improved player from last season, someone that actually showcased himself in your lineup to be a productive aspect with Zach LaVine out. How is he your third option? I genuinely do not know. And Jalen Johnson, I don't know how he's a third option either. He was the number two option with the Atlanta Hawks. Unless you're viewing last season with DeJounte Murray being there, or Clint Capella or Zachary Richard being that number two option as the number one overall pick. But Jalen Johnson, to me, screams number two option for this team automatically. So I don't understand. I think that this list is a little wanky, little weird. I don't necessarily understand. I just think it's ridiculous that Bradley Beal right now is being ranked at technically 74th in the NBA. I think he's a lot better player than he's being projected at 74th. He was coming in at number 14 on top three number one options. And I think from looking at this list and from players that we picked, I think that he can be better than some of these names on this list. Chris Middleton for sure, Fred VanVleet for sure, possibly even Draymond Green, getting that man up there. Maybe even Miles Turner. Top 15 for sure. Top 70 player in the NBA, I'll give it for Bradley Beal. Once again, I know the $50 million contract doesn't look great. I know the injuries doesn't look great. The no trade clause, everything like that. Let's not forget, ladies and gentlemen, I was not a big fan of this trade with Bradley Beal incoming. But after seeing this offseason changes, really working, bringing in those guys that can play make, facilitate, set up these scores, set up these offense, bringing in an offensive-minded head coach, really believing in these rookies. The Suns are screaming what everybody wants to hear for development and for betterness of this squad. And if you're making changes around all the edges, who's not to say that the three stars are not also going to get better with those changes benefiting them and making it easier for them to play for the Phoenix Suns? I'm telling you guys, Bradley Beal might be making $50 million. He might be viewed as an overpay right now. He might have a no trade clause, and Miami fans might be a big fan of him. But I know this man is going to prove his doubters wrong, prove his haters wrong, and step up for the Suns and being that third guy, maybe even being that second scorer in nights where Durant, Booker are injured or not getting it going on offense. And I'm telling you, he's going to be a difference maker for the Suns and making them a contender in the Western Conference. So let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. How do you guys feel? Do you think this is some disrespect on Bradley Beal? Do you think it's act perfectly right? Do you think he deserves to be tanked down more? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Once again, you guys have been absolutely fantastic, showing love, support, everything over on the channel. CJ and I are really appreciative. Media Day is coming up in less than a week. We're going to have all the news ramping up with that, leading up to the season, preseason, all that jazz. So if you want to make sure you stay up to date on everything revolving around the Suns team, hit the like, hit the subscribe button, stay up to date. I'm Bruce Velez. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode. Have a great rest of your day. Peace out.